Hi guys, it's Omer from MMOs.com, and I'll be doing a financial look at Activision Blizzard, one of the largest gaming companies in the world. In fact, they're actually the largest independent gaming company in the world. Companies like Sony and Tencent are bigger, but they do a whole lot of other stuff outside of gaming, so we're not going to really count them. I decided to do a financial look at Blizzard because they are such a large company and one most of you are familiar with. Plus, they're based here in America. Anyway, let's get down to business. We're going to start off with the usual question. Exactly how big is Activision Blizzard? The company is public, so we can easily pull up their profile on Bloomberg. Here we can see the company's market cap is sitting at right around $30 billion. And since Blizzard is an American company, we don't need to do any currency conversions this time around. I know we did so with Nexon and NCSoft. Here, it's just in US dollars, so it's simple. We ran up to $31 billion because the company just reported really strong earnings and the stock is expected to rise, and that rise isn't reflected in the market cap number we screen captured earlier. Activision Blizzard's closest peer in terms of size is Electronic Arts, which is worth about $24 billion. Blizzard dwarfs the size of other gaming companies, as you can see in the list I include on the right side. These guys are absolute juggernauts, and that probably makes a lot of sense because most of us are familiar with their games. We see them everywhere. Blizzard wasn't always this big though. I mean, look at the company's stock performance over the last 5 years in this chart. Since 2013, the value of the company has increased more than fourfold. So just a few years ago, the company was worth about $7.5 billion, and now they're worth about $31 billion. Anyone who invested in Blizzard in 2013 made over 4 times their money in 3 short years. Incredible. I wish I had invested, but alas, I did not. How'd they grow this fast? Well, let's take a look at their most recent financial results, and we'll see what's happening so we can better appreciate their growth. Anyway, the first thing we'll take a look at is something called the Reportable segment results. Here the company's just breaking down their sales by division. Activision, Blizzard, and King are the 3 operating divisions of Activision Blizzard, and most of this is pretty self-explanatory. A few things worth highlighting is that you can see Blizzard's revenue between 2015 Q2 and 2016 Q2 increased quite a bit, and of course the reason behind that is Overwatch. You had a pretty massive launch for Blizzard, thus just a massive jump in Q2 sales for Blizzard over there. On the right side, you see trailing 12 month, and that just means the last 12 months starting at that quarter. So you can see the numbers are pretty interesting. You can see Activision makes more revenue. Blizzard, of course, is growing a bit faster because it's growing at 12%, whereas Activision is actually shrinking a little bit year over year. And the table below just shows operating income, which is profitability for each division. The real takeaway over here is that the company made about $1.5 billion in revenue in Q2 of 2016, and that's the number we're highlighting right now. In the last 12 months, they made $5.3 billion. These numbers are all in millions of dollars, which is why it only says 5,326, but these are in millions of dollars. Up next, we can see a more graphical representation of their revenues. So you can see here that the Activision actually makes up 52% of their revenues, and Blizzard makes up 35% in the last 12 months. The interesting bit here, I think, is the fact that so much of their revenue comes from consoles. You can see on the right side, consoles 47% of all of Activision Blizzard, and PCs only 29%. Also surprising to me is that despite them owning King Digital, the guys behind Candy Crush, mobile is only about 18% of their revenue. I think that'd be a little bit bigger, but I suspect that'll grow in the future. Up next, we have a pretty cool slide called Deep Engagement that they released, which shows about 10 billion hours were spent playing Activision Blizzard games in the quarter. Interestingly enough, too, Overwatch had 500 million hours spent in the game, which is hella impressive because they have about 15 million players. With 50 million players, basic math shows that each player, on average, spent well over 20 hours playing the game. Actually, well over 30 hours playing the game. That's on average, which is quite impressive, and that's over the last 3 months. The company also released this pretty useless slide. It just kind of shows their thought process behind their franchises. They basically make really awesome games. Those awesome games attract players, and they make money off those players, and they can reinvest that money into making more awesome games. Not sure why they decided to make this whole flowchart, but I guess they thought it was fancy for their investors. Next up, this slide shows some interesting data, namely that Overwatch life-to-date revenues is about $500 million. They made over $500 million, or about $500 million, since Overwatch launched just recently. Unfortunately, they have no word about World of Warcraft. They simply said they have momentum behind World of Warcraft. They stopped releasing subscription numbers quite a while ago. But even though they don't release subscription numbers, I suspect they'll release some sales numbers on World of Warcraft Legion, probably sometime around next quarter or the quarter after that. And before we dive into some more numbers, we can see their audience reach. They have nearly 500 million monthly active users across their company. So Activision has about 49 million, which is a Q2 record. Blizzard has about 33 million, which is another quarterly record. And King is at 409 million, which I guess is not a quarterly record because it's not mentioned. Overwatch again has 15 million players around the globe. They actually boast that it's the fastest selling game in China after Diablo 3, which is the previous record there, and they hold the #1 position in Korean internet game rooms with over 30% share of playtime. That's impressive because The Korean PC bang market was dominated by League of Legends for such a long time, and it's finally been dethroned by Overwatch. So Overwatch is a huge success in Korea as well as the rest of the world, and it's perhaps proving a solid competitor to League of Legends on just the global scene of just sheer users. But whether they can hold that position or not remains to be seen. And let's get right back into the numbers for a minute. We can look at the balance sheet. This is the most recent numbers they released this quarter, and you can see they have about $2.3 billion sitting in cash. However, they actually have quite a bit of debt. You can see their gross debt is $5.1 billion. They owe $5.1 billion, but they only have $2.3 billion in cash. Luckily, all that debt isn't due immediately. You can see where some of the debt is due. The 8-year notes, for example, are due in 2021, and the 10-year notes are due in 2023. The percentage on the right side of these numbers is the interest rate that Blizzard pays to borrow that money. So if you have your net debt number at $2.8 billion, that's just their gross debt, and then you subtract the cash from it to find their net debt. And what's interesting here is if you look at the net debt position from 2015 to 2016, it increased about $2.8 billion. They had basically no net debt and actually had a positive net cash balance. And the reason that increased, their debt increased quite a bit, is because the company borrowed a lot of money to buy out King Digital. They paid about $5.9 billion to buy King Digital earlier this year. And if you remember my previous financial look videos, both Nexon and NCSoft had positive net cash balances. And it's okay that Blizzard doesn't have a net cash position. They have more debt than cash because the company makes a lot of money, as we saw in a previous slide. We saw that they made about $1.9 billion in operating income in the last 12 months, so they can easily pay all that debt back before it's even due. So they are still in a very healthy position, which is why they're worth over $30 billion. For a company that's worth over $30 billion, owing $5.1 billion in gross debt and $2.8 billion in net debt is really no big deal. $2.8 billion in net debt for a $30+ billion company is really nothing. Next up, we have some cool slides from an older presentation they made. It shows you their revenue growth in this chart, just basically from 1992 up until the last 12 months as of 2015. It's a little bit older, but it shows you just how fast and how consistent Blizzard has been in growing their revenue, which is why the stock price has gone up so much. Another interesting slide was their monthly active users in 196 countries, and it's actually pretty cool. You can see just how massive Activision Blizzard is in monthly active users. They're actually about a third the size of Facebook in terms of just how many people play their games monthly, and as is, they're bigger than Twitter, Spotify, and Netflix combined, just showing you a good idea of just how big the company is in terms of just how many people are playing their games. Up next, they released another cool slide, shows their investment in esports. You can just see how big the esports market is right now. And in terms of viewership, it's beating NHL and MLB. However, it's actually surprisingly small in terms of revenue generated. You can see just how little money is in esports today. So Blizzard clearly sees a market for esports, which is why they bought MLG earlier this year for about $46 million. They see a big growth in esports in the near future, and they want to be a part of it. I mean, it's pretty amazing that more people watch esports than MLB, but MLB's got nearly 30 times the market size, despite the fact, again, that esports is a much bigger market in terms of people watching it. There's just a lot more money in MLB, and I guess, again, Blizzard is betting on that esports will be bigger and bigger. And before this video gets too long, let's go ahead and recap and basically conclude over here. And we can quickly answer this question of how big Activision Blizzard is. A quick recap shows they're about $31 billion in market cap, which is their worth. About $5.3 billion in revenue in the last 12 months. They have about $1.9 billion in pre-tax profits in the last 12 months, and they had about 15% revenue growth year over year. So they're a growing company, profitable, and the biggest independent gaming company in the world. And that's it. I apologize if this video ran a bit long. I try to keep these short, but Blizzard is a massive company, and there was a lot to mention. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought about this video, and give me that like if you enjoyed it, and I will do more of these.